bottom of page 32. At that time, Sir Simon went on. There was a wizard in my father's kingdom by the name of Alistair. Some months before my father grew ill, this man had arrived at the castle one morning seeking employment, and my father had taken pity on him. He was a raggle-taggle sort when he first appeared. His robe was torn and dusty, and he talked of having traveled long distances and having suffered much. From the beginning, I was more suspicious of his story than my father, and pressed Alistair for details. He gave none. At first, Alistair seemed perfectly harmless. He was given a room down near the kitchen where he sometimes invited me to help him mix up potions and salves that were supposed to straighten crooked bones and settle upset stomachs. He had a wardrobe in the room that he always kept locked, and I noticed he was very careful never to open it when I was there. The more I saw of Alistair, the less I really knew him. He was a man of secrets, some of which he told me, but more often I heard tales of the wrongs that had been done to him. The stories were garbled, and I didn't pay attention to the details, but I sensed even then his desperate need to control people, to have power. Let me give you an example. Around his neck, the wizard wore a length of woven ribbon from which dangled 3 medals or tokens. Once early on in our acquaintance, when he still trusted me, he pulled that necklace out of his robe and showed it to me. In the middle hung a small flat disc made out of lead. At the time, I did not find it particularly interesting. I know better now. Hanging from the ribbon on either side of the disc, there were 2 halves of one medal that showed the 2 faces of Janus. They had hinges, and Alistair told me that they could be fitted together when necessary, but he preferred to use them separately. The word January comes from Janus, doesn't it? William asked. Precisely, Sir Simon said. I see your education has not been entirely neglected. Janus guards the gates of heaven and looks both ways in time. But the image of Janus on Alistair's necklace had an evil magical power. One half of the token made things small, and the other restored them to their normal size. The symbols inside Janus's head on each surface were different. The side that made things small showed 2 staffs, the instruments of punishment. The other side showed 2 keys. I saw him work this magic on a rat. When he pointed the staff side, the rat shrunk to the size of a toy. When he used the side with the keys, the rat returned to normal. I'm convinced that most of Alistair's magic lie in that necklace, but I never learned much more about it because after a while he grew secretive around me. Okay, boys and girls, I want you to stop and think now. What does Alistair wear around his neck? And what can the things that he wears around his neck do? If you know the answer to this, continue listening. If you don't know the answer, go back and re-listen to what I just read. Meanwhile, my father got steadily worse. The doctors were totally mystified. I supposed I was the one who thought of asking Alistair for help, though now I curse myself for the idea. He came and sat by my father's bed, asking about the symptoms and making a long list in some strange language. The next day, the wizard began administering an evil-smelling potion to my father, who took it reluctantly, as the taste was as bad as the odor. To our amazement, he appeared to get better. The palsy seemed less violent, and my father had long periods of peace when he could rest. It was not until much later that I realized the drug that helped him sleep was also slowly poisoning him. Alistair was hailed as a genius by all of us, and my father insisted that the wizard be given a large bedroom right next to his own. To everybody's relief, the doctors were bundled off to wherever they had come from. My father became quieter with every passing day, and he slept a great deal. When he was awake, he insisted that Alistair stay near him, for he felt the wizard was responsible for his recovery. I often come in to find them deep in conversation, and my father began to grow suspicious of me and his own trusted counselors. Alistair was poisoning his mind and his body at the same time. William's legs were beginning to ache, so he shifted position. I am taking too long to tell this story, Sir Simon said quickly. I will hurry. Just days before my father died, he issued various edicts through Alistair. In these, the counselors were sent on missions to neighboring kingdoms. They objected, knowing my father was near death. It meant that they would have to return to the kingdom through the forest. Alistair had put some sort of spell on the forest to protect our kingdom from attack, and we knew the counselors would not be able to get back through. We were convinced Alistair controlled my father's every action, but my father would not even see us to listen to our arguments. Alistair had moved his pallet into my father's room, and he even ate his meals there. The counselors had no choice but to leave, and after that my only friend in the castle was my old nurse Calendar, who had been with me since birth. She and I sat up late into the night discussing plans for defeating Alistair, but they came to nothing. My father died at last, and if there is anything I can thank Alistair for, it is that he went peacefully and without pain. But I can never forgive Alistair for turning my father against me. At the end, he would not speak to me at all, saying that I had been a traitor to him and to our kingdom. Sir Simon stopped speaking and covered his face for a moment. Then he went on. The day after the funeral, Alistair came to my room and showed me a paper that my father had signed before he died. It proclaimed that Alistair was to succeed my father, as I was not fit to rule. Calendar was with me at the time. Okay, boys and girls, I want you to stop and think about a few questions. What did Alistair do to Sir Simon's father? So I want you to think about that question. And I also want you to stop and think, who was Sir Simon's only friend left in the castle? Who did he say his only friend left was? And then lastly, I want you to think, what did Alistair show Sir Simon on the day after the funeral? And what did this sheet of paper that he showed him say? If you can answer all of these questions, because these are really important questions, I want you to continue listening. But if you're not sure on one of those, go back and re-listen. All right. I'm about right in the middle of the first paragraph on page 37. I was dressed in a full suit of armor as I was about to review the guard. I ripped the paper to shreds, and the two of us attacked the wizard. Alistair pulled the necklace from under his robe, pointed the lead disc at me, and mumbled a word. I reached up and snatched the necklace, which fell off his neck. One half of the Janus medal came away in my hand. He lunged at me. I tried to get it back, but I curled my fingers around it and held on. Calendar was trying to pull him off, but I could not help her because by that time Alistair's spell had begun to work. The bottom half of me had already turned to lead. I could not move my feet or bend my knees. The knight shuddered, remembering that moment. It was horrible. I cried out to Calendar, but she was no longer struggling with the wizard. They were both watching me, he with a terrible smile on his face. And Calendar? The knight stopped speaking for a moment, as if he were trying to work out something in his mind. I realize now that Calendar deserted me in the end. It was too late to save me, and she must have known she would be left behind with the wizard. At the very last moment, as my face was growing smooth and cold, Alistair flipped the disc and pointed the other side at me. Then everything went black, and the next thing I saw was you. So the other side of the lead disc made you small, William asked. No, it must have sent me here. I'm not small in my own country, young man, only in yours. The Silver Knight patted the pouch that hung from his belt. This is the weapon that makes things small, the token I stole from Alistair. How do you know it still works? Why, I had not thought of that, said the Silver Knight, pulling apart the drawstrings of his pouch. I supposed we had better test it out on something. William glanced around him. Here, try this, he said, placing an old pincushion on the ledge in front of the knight. Sir Simon extended both arms, and holding the token before him like a shield, he pointed it directly at the pincushion. Nothing happened. I remember Alistair muttered something when he used it on the rat, the knight said. Try the word small, William suggested. Small, said Sir Simon. The pincushion remained the same. They tried 5 or 6 other words, but still nothing happened. Perhaps it's only works on living things, Sir Simon said. He glanced up at William thoughtfully. Oh, no, you don't, William said, standing up. You can't try it on me, because you couldn't make me big again. There'd be nobody to bring you food, and you'd be in terrible trouble when Mrs. Phillips came looking for me. It was only an idea, my dear sir. Do not alarm yourself, Sir Simon said. But how else will we know if it works? Okay, boys and girls, stop and think. Ask yourself, what does Sir Simon have with him, and what power does this have? All right, middle of page 39. I know. I'll bring you a bug or something tomorrow. Suddenly, the attic door opened down below. William, Mrs. Phillips said, I've been calling you. It's dinner time. William reached down and scooped up Sir Simon so that the knight was safely hidden in his hand by the time Mrs. Phillips started up the stairs. "I'm coming," he said quickly. Mrs. Phillips stopped at the tone in his voice and gazed up at him. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Yes, just fine," he said as casually as he could. "I'll be there in a minute." He could feel Sir Simon squirming inside his hand, so he loosened his hold enough to give the little man some air. "All right, then," she said as she headed back down the stairs. "Don't forget, you've still got your homework to do, and we haven't practiced the back handsprings in 2 days." "That was close," William said as he set Sir Simon on the wall walk. The knight was gasping for air, and some minutes went by before he was able to speak. "My dear sir, more gently, if you please. I am no longer made of lead." "Sorry, it had to be quick," William explained. "Listen, if you ever hear the attic door open and I knock 3 times on the wall, that means you must hide quickly because somebody is with me." The knight nodded. "See you later when I bring up your dinner." "Until then," Sir Simon said weakly. "I'll catch a bug tomorrow," William added as he went down the stairs.